This episode was co-produced by SigTig, the leading Swiss angel investor club, which connects smart money investors with innovative and highly scalable Swiss startups. SigTig has published the Swiss Angel Investor Handbook, packed with the best practices for people that want to learn how to invest in early-stage startups and avoid common pitfalls. It's also a useful guide for startup founders that look for angel investors. Go to angelhandbook.ch to get your free copy. Again, that's angelhandbook.ch.
Everything is changing with large language models, AI, and so on. And a lot of content these days is already AI generated. And we believe that trust or trusted channels getting more and more important. And word of mouth is the most important channel.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvain.
Pascal, Adrian, and very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here.
Pascal, you're the co-founder at Hypt. You're building a software solution to leverage and scale the power of word of mouth for the first time. And Adrian, you are an active business angel at SigTig, as well as a CFO and board member in numerous companies. Before we actually talk about how you guys met and what brought you together, I want to start with you, Pascal. It's a question I have to laugh out loud a bit because most Hypt employees, or many Hypt employees, are actually also volunteers at Swisspreneur. So I wonder, is that already an official part of your employment contract at Hypt?
Not yet. To be honest, there are still some people left at Swisspreneur which are not working at Hypt.
Or the other way around.
So I don't know what was first. But yeah, I think we have a very similar growth mindset at Swisspreneur and at Hypt. And yeah, I think it comes natural that we're looking for the same talents.
I really love that because I think it's a perfect combination to do both roles. Adrian, you wear many different hats. You are a startup investor, you're a CFO, a board member, and you were also awarded the most active business angel at SigTig last year. Congratulations. I think that's super cool.
Thank you.
Congrats.
What actually pulled you into startup investment? What's the attractiveness for you behind all of that?
It's the fame and money, of course. But, I mean, it brought me here to the number one business podcast, and it's an honor to be here.
Could be worse.
Could be worse, yeah. And you shouldn't do it for the fame, and you shouldn't do it for the money. I mean, to earn money, there are way simpler ways. I mean, financial returns are important, but in my opinion, you should have an intrinsic motivation to choose that asset class. And in my case, it's the entrepreneurship and impact. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but I want to leave the world a better place for my children. And I'm convinced that investing in startups is one way to achieve that. We are enabling and accelerating the adoption of innovation, and innovation helps to tackle today's and future challenges. And I have enormous admiration for all entrepreneurs and startup founders in particularly, because they are facing the highest risk. I mean, they are going somewhere no one else went before, and quota of failure is quite high. I myself never had the guts to do it myself, but investing and supporting startups is my alternative to become a...
That's still a very good involvement and a very much needed one. I wonder, how did you and the Hypt team actually meet? I'm sure there's a fun backstory behind that.
Maybe, yeah. It was 2 years ago at the startup days, and one of my startups won the pitch competition. Shout out to Viato here. And we were celebrating that, and two guys with melon-colored hoodies introduced themselves, and they were ultra relaxed. And that was because the round was already filled. But I had a good time with them. We drank some beer, and we found common grounds. And I think that relationship between investor and the founder is very important, because they are in the driver's seat. you are on the sideline and you have to trust them. And on the other side, they have to feel comfortable to come to you and ask for advice and support.
Absolutely. So you did leave a lasting impression, Pascal, with Adrian.
Yeah, and I think like my co-founder Tobias, he always says, we have to stay till last because at the end, they are the best discussions, the best conversations. And I guess it also applies to this. So yeah, super happy that we met Adrian.
Is it because you already had enough beer so the discussions get more interesting?
It's more about like, because the others had enough beer.
I see.
And they are more relaxed. It's less about just business, but also like getting to know each other and bonding on a different level.
Absolutely. So Hypt is tackling word of mouth at scale. And I wonder, when was that aha moment when you realized this is really the problem that you want to dedicate your time, your energy, and also your money eventually to solve with your company?
So I grew up in an entrepreneur family. My dad is an entrepreneur, my uncle, my grandfather. So for me, it was always clear that I want to do something in that space. So it was never a question, hey, I want to work forever in a corporate. And Tobias and myself, we are both marketeers. So we come with a marketing and sales background. And in our past, we worked with a lot of companies, enterprise companies, smaller companies. And word of mouth was always a topic. And we always tried to generate word of mouth. But there was no tool to actually help us. And as a marketeer, we always look for ways to actually leverage a channel. And at the end, we said, hey, if there is no tool, we start building one for ourselves. And we then start with smaller customers, so with restaurants, publishers, and so on. And then was that day where we got invited by the Bernese Cantonal Bank, so First Bank. And it was actually also because of we stayed last. So we met the CEO of the bank and we got invited, and he said, hey, he really want to use our solution. And we were very early stage. And that was, I think, the moment where I said to Tobias, hey, I think we're really onto something because even banks are already like buying our product.
I love that. And you basically solved your own problem. I think that's in general a very good starting point. You also say, I think on your website or in your pitch deck, I'm not sure where I found that information, but you say that word of mouth drives 5 times more sales than social ads. Why is that? Can you tell us a bit more behind this number?
So we live in a very challenging time. Everything is changing with large language models, AI, and so on. And a lot of content these days is already AI generated. And we believe that trust or trusted channels getting more and more important. And word of mouth is the most important channel, most trusted. If you get a recommendation from that could be fitting for you, you come with a certain trust to the bank, to the insurance company, to that company. And then it's easier to close actually that rather than coming from a social media ad where you just click on it or maybe click by accident.
Makes sense. And can you walk us through the customer journey? How do you encourage happy customers to refer the company or the product, the service that they just used? And how do you avoid people who might not be that happy to leave a negative review or even worse, talking bad about the company?
So Hypt is a solution you can pretty much use after every positive interaction with a customer. It doesn't really matter if it's after consultation, if it's in the e-banking or like an e-service, if it's after an event. So every time when you have a positive interaction, you can actually use Hypt as a company. And companies then trigger emails, push notification, hand out QR codes, similar to like regular feedback solution. But what we do is like we go way beyond that. So we not just ask for a feedback, we then let the user enter a chat funnel. And then in the chat funnel, we start interaction, we start engagement, we build up engagement, and we get them to a point where they start thinking about, hey, who could be interested in that solution? Who could be interested in that product? And we make it super simple to actually send out a recommendation right away. And then on the other hand, if someone is not happy, we of course not ask for a recommendation. We then try to give them space, give them room to leave that feedback, and then guide them back to the company so they can handle that concern.
And ideally that then happens privately, not with like a public Google review or something. And how do your customers measure success? Is it purely the number of referrals that you generated for them, or do they also measure the conversion rate, or how do they see if their implementation is successful?
So what we promise our customers, for example, in the insurance and banking sector, is that we generate at least 26% a recommendation rate. So 26% of the user entering one of our funnels actually also sends at least one recommendation, apart from the other values we are generating, like online reviews or feedback.
Yeah. Well, I like that. Adrian, back to you. At SigTech, I assume you see hundreds of pitches every year. And I wonder what made Hypt stand out from the crowd, that from all the pitches that you've seen, was there anything that really caught your attention?
Yeah, as you already said, the founders made a good impression. And I mean, I decided to invest in them when I first met them. And back then, I haven't had the pitch or haven't seen the pitch deck yet. But I was convinced that they would be able to pull it off. Whatever they do, they're going to be successful.
So it was really the team, the founders behind the company that convinced you in that very moment when you met in person.
Yeah, it was their drive. I mean, at one point in the due diligence process, an investor mentioned that all of us have the higher academia than the founders. And we like that very much. Because what they're lacking or instead of academia, they can come with startup experience. They know their customers' pain points, and they can sell. And I think selling is one of the most important skills for a founder. I mean, before you have your first customer, you have to convince or sell to your parents, to your friends, to investors, to employees. And you have to convince them that your idea is worthwhile and that you yourself have the stamina and the ability to pull it through.
That's actually a good segue into my next question. What traction or what KPIs did you focus on when you actually looked at Hypt and evaluated the investment opportunity? Was it mainly the sales, the revenue, or anything else?
I mean, when I first invested, it was purely because of the founders.
Yeah.
Now in the second round, where I doubled down, it was their traction. And for me, ARR is very important. I like it because VCs love it and it drives the valuation. And then I love all measures that go into ARR are important for me. And in that case, it's the conversion rate from pilot to recurring contracts. Yep. It's the average contract size, how long are the sales cycles, and the churn, so how many customers they're losing on the way. And to challenge the ARR growth, I'm looking at customer acquisition cost versus customer lifetime value, because you can always buy ARR. And if that matches, that they are on a good traction.
Yeah, if you offer $2 for $1, of course, you win customers in ARR, but it's not really sustainable.
Exactly.
I also want to talk about the market size, because we often hear that this is an important criteria from an investor's perspective. And if you think about the market of word of mouth, that's probably something that many people have not heard of or did not really think about. How do you look at the market size that Hypt can serve from an investor perspective?
I mean, currently they are serving mostly banks and insurances. And as a board member from a bank, I know that banks need Hypt, or even if they don't know it yet, but they will realize soon all others use Hypt. They are in need of it. And I think every B2C company needs to address the topic of word-to-mouth marketing. And mostly it's service companies now, but I think in the end, all consumer goods should come with a Hypt QR code. And I think also B2B companies are not off topic. I mean, I have a dream that one day all carpet layers around the globe spread the love about the unique Kugelgarn carpets through Hypt.
That's a cool vision to have. And we all know in the pitch deck, everything always looks rosy. It looks great, fantastic story, great founders, strong numbers. What doubts did you have along the way before you invested into Hypt for the first time? Was there anything that you were questioning, or whether you actually should follow investment or not?
Actually, I had an enormous doubt that people would actually go through and make the recommendations, but because I was reluctant to do so, to go out and tell people, oh, use that product or that service. but the traction shows me wrong. It actually works. And I also changed my view a bit. It was a moment when I met a startup. Me as a meat lover, I tried the vegan cheese from New Roots, and it was fantastic. And I was looking for the Hypt QR code to spread the message to my vegetarian friends and family to try that.
So I love that you have an opinion, a hypothesis, basically, but then you're open to be proven wrong. I think that's probably a very important characteristic about any successful investor.
Yeah.
Pascal, coming back to you, scaling and actually building a SaaS solution often requires your own sales team. So I wonder, can you tell a bit more about how Hypt goes to market and what your numbers like ARR, lead cycle time, etc. look like?
So very early on, of course, it was us selling the product. So Tobias and myself. And I guess we were lucky that we are not technical founders, the two of us, but we are very good in telling a story and very good in selling. So from day one, we were able to get paying customers. So even though we were working with restaurants, first restaurant was paying for our solution. So we were trying to figure out what is actually the value of our solution. And then lucky we got Roger, of course, the third co-founder, who is the technical founder, and he can build a great product behind that. And then now these days, we still work a lot with direct sales. So a lot of cold outreach, a lot of direct sales, and of course, some word of mouth also for us. And then we have a very clear focus. These days, as I told you before, we sold to restaurants, we sold to publishers, we sold to roofing companies to figure out what is our market. And we figured out banks, insurance companies, they're a good fit because they sell trust. They need trust in the market, and word of mouth is the most trustworthy channel. So we have a very nice fit there, and we focus purely on banks, insurance companies.
Which is probably a very natural place to start. But how did you realize that banks and insurance are actually the better fit for you?
So with restaurants, a lot of restaurants, they're small. They have a lot of different problems. And yes, winning customer is one of the problems, but not always the most urgent one. So it was sometimes kind of an effort to actually get them to use the solution and then keep on using the solution. And when we started working with banks, we were a little bit like Adrian, where we were like, hey, let's see if people actually recommend the bank through our solution. And they actually did. So we realized very early back then, even with an MVP, hey, our solution actually works, and it works for banks, it works for enterprise customer, and they have a dedicated person usually responsible for us. So they have more focus on Hypt. They use it throughout their whole processes. And that is really important for our solution.
Wonderful. I think that's cool. You saw that there's traction, then you just doubled down on it. How do you sell to them? How does your sales process look like?
So these days we have a sales team, and that sales team does cold outreach. We have account executives who do the sales together with us. So we're still part of that, of course. That clear focus. We run that playbook. It's very easy to integrate together with banks, insurance companies quite quickly. And that's why our sales cycles are around 3 to 4 months right now. So nice. Quite short, but the deal size are around 50,000 at the beginning before upselling.
But that's pretty cool. I think as soon as you go above 20K, it's worth having a sales team. Of course, the bigger, the better. But with these lead cycle times, you can do pretty well. What's your ARR at the moment?
I'm not fully disclosing the concrete number, but at the beginning of the year, we reached our first million in ARR.
Nice. Congrats. That's a huge milestone.
Thank you.
And you naturally started here in Switzerland. Obviously, you live here, you were born here, but most likely Switzerland might become too small of a market for you and you will hit a ceiling. When does Switzerland get too small for you? I think you also had thoughts about the US expansion at one point. You're also probably in Germany by now. So how do you think about expanding outside of Switzerland?
So we have a very clear focus on industry, and we decided that for now we don't broaden that focus to other industries or open that focus on the industries. So we are pretty much in contact with most of the banks, insurance companies these days. Some of them are in like contracting, some of them are in the funnel, and maybe it's not the fit for right now, but maybe like in a half a year. And that's why we already started looking towards like the German and the Austrian market. You said it correctly. We were thinking about the US market as well. We did the accelerator program in San Francisco. We spent quite some time in the US to learn that market or figure out that market. And we decided that we go first towards the European market just because we want to build more fundament on the product side, but also in the market before we do the step towards the US. Also, more traction, more money we can then use to actually go this big step towards the US.
Yeah, I guess it's also a huge investment need if you want to expand directly to the US.
Exactly. And one of us has to move over. And that is also decided that at some point, one of us will move over. And that's still like a big plan for us that we want to also conquer US market. When we started out, we sat together as founders and we discussed what company do we want to build. And it was clear for us that we don't want to build a small SME. I'm not saying that the SME is bad, but it's just not the right fit for us. We said we want to build something that is able to scale, that is able to go international. That is what excites us. It's also part of our culture code with go big or go home, ambition. So for us, it's clear that at some point we want to get to the US market.
I love that spirit. Super cool. Adrian, back to you. Pascal often mentioned to me that investors always asked him, well, I understand what you're doing, but how are you different from a form or just regular tools that already exist out there? So I wonder from an investor perspective, where do you see the differentiation and also the defensibility at Hypt?
That was also a question we asked them back when we started the due diligence. For me, the real differentiator here is that they are not just a survey tool or tool to get your net promoter score. You can do that, you can get the feedback, but you can also spread the love. So it's a full-fledged word of mouth manager. And during the due diligence, we also did a customer interview, and this customer also confirmed that this dual purpose was very essential for them. And as Pascal also mentioned, it's hard to defend a SaaS solution just through an IP. It's tricky, but they have a head start.
Wonderful. And talking about the head start, Pascal, if you look a bit into the future, I think we read on LinkedIn yesterday that there is some big news with a funding round that just closed. Please tell us a bit more about that and your future plans with that money.
I guess yesterday people connected with me only saw our announcement on LinkedIn. Yeah, super happy about that. We announced our seed round, 1.65 million yesterday with international investors, actually. So we have first German investor in the lead, Venpace, and then we have a first US investor, actually, which is also very exciting because in the journey of fundraising, we figured out that getting a US investor is not an easy task if you don't have traction in US. And so that's very exciting for us. And we look towards like working with them because they have a lot of LPs in the insurance and banking space in Europe, but also US. So that will be very interesting for us. And we want to continue building up like the growth of teams changes. But I'm a believer that to use AI, you still need the right team to actually implement AI and then drive AI. So it's not just about AI taking over teams. You need still a strong team to actually run AI. So we will certainly also continue growing the team and working on our traction.
So full steam ahead on the path of expansion.
Exactly.
And Adrian, of course, you also invested a second time through SigTick this time. And I wonder, what is your expectation for Hypt as an investor? Do you expect an IPO? Do you expect an exit at one point? What do you hope for?
Probably the same as every other business angel. I mean, the chances for an IPO are very slim, and I wouldn't recommend it because of all the cost involved. And recurring dividend model could be nice, but for retirement, I'm not there yet. So, and it wouldn't be enough to finance new investments. I need a sales exit.
Working on that.
I really cherish the time with Pascal and the others, but once I get the opportunity to have a good sale, I'm taking it and keep the train rolling.
On to the next.
On to the next.
So your task is clear, Pascal. Now you know what is expected of you.
But I guess it's aligned with our ambition and our goals. So yeah, we know that as soon as you get venture capital, you want to have like a return.
Yeah.
Usually it's not about dividends, but it's about like an exit in some way. So we're very aware of that. And I think we have the similar goal and are aligned on that.
Adrian, do you have a specific timeline when you would like to have an exit, or you're just happy if it occurs at one point in time? You don't really care when it is.
I have no timeline. I mean, if they grow as they did in the last year, I mean, I can stay invested as long as they grow like that.
Let's see where the journey takes you. I also have a few rapid fire questions for you guys to wrap up the conversation. I'm going to start with you, Pascal. What was the hardest lesson that you've learned so far as a startup founder?
Liquidity is king.
I love that. Yeah, it can really kill you. Adrian, and what is the toughest lesson or the hardest lesson for you as a business angel?
Saying no. So FOMO is the enemy of every business angel. And being Sigtic's most active business angel proves that I'm not yet there.
Fair point. That's a good one. Pascal, what's one thing that you would never compromise on when building a company?
Culture. For me, team is very important, so culture.
Choose one discipline, CFO, board member, or investor.
It's very fulfilling to wear all those hats, so I don't want to miss any of them.
Fair enough. Investor money or bootstrapping?
Right now, I would say investor money just because, we are on that track now.
Yeah. And your take, Adrian?
I have to go with investor money as well. Otherwise, I would have go back to the boring assets like stock and obligations.
Fair enough. It was wonderful having you both here. Adrian and Pascal, thank you so much for your time. And I wish you lots of success on this journey together to hopefully making Hypt the big success story here in Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.